Pat Tillman. I got the honor and privilege to play with Pat for 3 years at ASU and 4 years with the Cardinals. And I would say he's probably, if I made my list at the top of the list, just because of.
Sugar Snake Takes.
Eager Beaver, I'm excited. I'm excited to do another episode with you guys. Snake, Suga, Mike. Good to see you guys back in the unwindy car there. Studio C over there, right?
Yes,
Snake, is that
Studio Highlander.
Studio High. Windy still at the farm. It's always windy in the farm, I'd assume.
Yeah,
right?
It blows out here in the plains, but it's been really good getting back out here to the farm and was inoculating cordyceps, and it's always kind of fun to just be doing all that stuff because it's not something I ever dreamt I'd be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fruit of your labor to kind of see all that work come to place, and we got some cool things happening at Umbo and some shifts we're going to make, and that'll be including a lot of your hard work that you're doing today, growing mushrooms at the farm. We'll be utilizing those for some products. So better we'll wrap this thing up quick so you get back to work.
Thank you.
You got a lot. But hey, today, guys, we're going to talk about favorite teammates and maybe some favorite opponents that you've ever had. I know in the jiu-jitsu room, there's always that guy or two that you really love rolling with because you like their style. They match you where you come at them with, and so there's always people in that room that it's easy to pick them and want to roll with. And then there's always opponents that you either are concerned to roll with, maybe they're leg lockers or things like that. But for you guys, obviously you've had some illustrious careers. People love rivalries, whether it's NFL or UFC. And also the idea of, the people who are excelling you, teams, and what was the quote about state champions in the wrestling room always come in pairs, because there's always that kind of mentality of guys driving each other to be the best. So on that note, for you guys, I don't know who wants to start, but just kind of rapping about your favorite opponents and or some of your favorite training partners, teammates that either help push you to become the best. So that's the question for the day.
I can go first if that's all right with you, Suga.
Absolutely.
For me, it's tough to really narrow down and try to go, singular into like favorite teammate. Because as I started playing football, Pop Warner, Optimist in Boise, all the way up to, finishing out my career in the NFL, I had a lot of teammates. But I know we want to, probably focus on when it really is when we're on the knife's edge, and that was in the NFL. I got to give credit to a few at Arizona State, like Juan Roque, my left tackle. He bled pure like love and loyalty to the team, to me. My left tackle, he still protects me when I see him. He always opening doors and like backing people off. I'm like, Juan, man, relax, dude. It's all right. But he's just got a huge heart. And like Keith Poole, my receiver, we came in, played 4 years and tore it up. A couple of, undersized white dudes that shouldn't have been there that were just confident and brought the best out of each other. Another guy, Steve Bush, a dear friend, played tight end with him in ASU and with the Cardinals. And then like Derek Rogers was another great teammate who just came in and just played at a different level. And another one, Pat Tillman. I got the honor and privilege to play with Pat for 3 years at ASU and 4 years with the Cardinals. And I would say he's probably, if I made my list at the top of the list, just because of him and what he embodied as a whole entire human, but as a teammate too, man. Undersized. He wasn't supposed to be at ASU. He wasn't supposed to make it to the league, yet he balled out and was a straight, every practice, every walkthrough, everything was 100%. And so we bonded immediately because I never was able to like go 80% and just half-ass it in practice. I was in it in practice. I mean, I get in fights in practice because I was so intense and guys couldn't handle that. Same with Pat. He'd get in fights all the time because the receiver didn't want him to hit him. And he would lay a little wood on him because the guy was coming in lazy. And so a guy who just, I used to call them tone setters. They set the tone. Here's the tone for today, guys. Either match it or all the coaches are going to see your half-assed response to having to run 110s and 120-degree heat in the middle of the summer at Arizona State. You're going to be here and do it, or you're going to go through the motion, or you're going to get something out of it. And so they were tone setters. And I got to give credit to the rest of the tone setters that I played with, like Larry Sinners, Rod Smith, Ronnie Mack in Arizona, Frank Sanders, Aeneas Williams. I mean, good Lord, the dude worked tirelessly, not only at his craft, but as him as a man, as a human being too. Like, such an honor to play with a guy like that who really lived at such a high standard that how do you come in? You can't help but come into the facility hungover on a Monday morning and look at Aeneas and kind of feel a little bit like, damn, he went and read his Bible and got to sleep early Sunday night after the game and was like there early Monday morning putting in the work. And you're like, damn it. Guys that you kind of want to live up to be like and emulate, but they also make you understand too when you're not doing it, when you're not doing it 100%. And those come around few and far between, but they're the tone setters. Rod Smith was a tone setter. I didn't have to do as much with Rod there because Rod knew that I had other things to focus on, and he would be the one that would be pulling the guys and inspiring them and dragging them through a tough workout. And then if he didn't do it, I'd always be there too. But yeah, man, some great teammates. Probably one of the biggest ones that really helped me, almost like in another episode we talked about Greg Lords giving me that confidence, was Larry Sinners. Larry Sinners played fullback, and he was actually number 3 all-time receiving receptions in the NFL as a fullback before the explosion of the spread out wide open offenses. And this dude everything he did was straight country tough, tooth and nail, 100%. That included like going out and drinking after practice or going out and having his fun and partying. Dude showed up every single day, and I loved him for it. And he gave me a lot of confidence as a rookie, inviting me into his room to play track and field between practices and have a cold Coors Light with him. And I'm like, introduced me into the back room where all the veterans were, and was like, he took me under his wing. And we've spoke of Larry earlier, with the Eye of the Tiger, baby. That's Larry Sinners, man. LC, what a great teammate. One of my all-time favorites. Ruben Drones at Denver, another just badass. I knew no matter what he did out of the field, off the field in his own time, when he put that click, it was on. He was bringing it 100%, tone setter. And Frank Sanders, I think I mentioned, another great just teammate that helped me a lot of ways. I also had the privilege to play against some amazing Hall of Famers, none other than like Junior Seau was so fun to play against. He was having fun out there and calling you out and also scaring you at the same time. And so it just like brought the best out of you, along with Ray Lewis. Got to play against who may be the greatest linebacker ever. And so, when you get a first down and you juke him and make it dive and like get past him, you realize too, like we've talked about this, appreciating and the expectations and self-love, like, yo, I just juked Ray Lewis. One time I juked Deion Sanders, man. I actually juked. I went like that and got around him, and I'm like on the field going, I just juked Deion. Holy shit. And then bam, I got smashed afterwards. But, these guys brought the best out of everybody they played, and I never backed away from them. I always went straight at them like, oh, you're the best? If I could ball on you and you're the best in the entire NFL, then what's that make me? I'm pretty damn good, I'm not going to shy away from you because you're the best. So I had a lot of great opponents, but my teammates were really where it was at. My centers, Tommy Nalen, Jason Starkey, Mike Devlin, Mike Grudadaria, the dudes that snapped the ball to me, those guys had my safety in their hands, and I loved every one of those guys deeply too, and great teammates. So I could go on and on and on for another hour, but that's just the icing on the cake there. The top dudes that really had my back, and I'm sure I'm missing some, but much love and gratitude to all my teammates that believed in me.
Yeah. Right on, man. Yeah, Larry Centers is such a trip. I really enjoyed your guys' comedy thing that you did out in Arizona. You guys just looked like old friends having so much fun. Anybody who saw that, Rashad, you were there,
Yeah,
man. I
it
was.
was good.
Those
It
dudes
was
were
good.
going off. It was so good. But I'm gonna have to say, Mike, you're gonna have to dig up that video of Snake
Deion
juking
Sanders.
Deion Sanders. I see
I
that,
hope
bro.
it's out there. I
I'm
mean,
gonna have to see
maybe,
that.
maybe, I'm pretty. I mean, my memory is pretty good on those kind of things because I remember that. You remember something like that? I mean, one of the greatest athletes
I
to
think
grace this planet. And here he is on the field, and I'm playing against him and coached all week to throw to the left, throw to the left. We're going to go left. And my first double route I get, I'm going right. Why? Because Deion's 10 yards off. He ain't getting tested today. He's Deion Sanders. He's prime time. Nope, not with me. I'm coming at you, Deion. And he took me back pick six a couple times. It's all right. I completed the ball on him too. And there's mad respect there when you see these guys. When I see Ray, I see Deion, I see some of these opponents. There's a respect thing there that doesn't
Yeah.
do anything but help me go, all right. My one thing was to leave with respect, to leave with dignity. And these guys all look at me as a competitor. And that's really what you want when you're stepping into the ring
Was that
or
when
on the field.
you were on the Cardinals or the Broncos against Deion?
Deion was Cardinals. We played the Cowboys. We were in the NFC East, so
Okay.
we played them a bunch. And, played against Michael Strahan, another amazing, like, oh my God, man, Hugh Douglas. I mean, I could go down the line, Brian Dawkins. I got to play against like Hall of Famers that were, you bet you had to bring it to beat those dudes, man. And there's a lot of respect there. That's the fun part, is that mutual respect amongst guys that play the game right, play it with their heart, play it with everything they got. Whether
Mm-hmm.
I cussed you out and called you a dirty name and you did the same to me and we got after it off the field, retrospect 20 years later, yo, man, I know I can count on you.
Super cool, man. I love those stories, and I'm excited to hear you, Sugar. Obviously, the individual sports and the hype between rivalries and the UFC, that's what makes that sport extremely exciting to watch. And obviously, you have yours. I'm sure our audience is kind of thinking, "Oh, what's Rashad going to say? Who's that opponent?" Probably more importantly, because we all got it in our minds. But for you, who was your favorite opponent? We'll start there, and we'll step into teammates too for sure. But you got something
Okay.
that comes to mind.
Yeah. So my favorite opponent to go against, it was Rampage Jackson, man. I mean, Quinton Rampage Jackson. He brought out the best in me because there was that element of like, yo, this dude he can beat me. You know what I'm saying? Like there was that respect that he could beat me, but at the same time, every single time we get in a room together, we were just like, oil and water. We just didn't mix. We just did not mix, and it was dynamic. It was a dynamic. It was beef on site. It was beef on site. Like there was a time where I was hanging out, not have anything to do with anything fight. We're just hanging out at the club, and I see him. He jumps in my face, and we start going back and forth like we always do, and pretty soon it escalated to the point where we're kind of pushing and we had to get separated, and I got kicked out the club and he got to stay. But that was the kind of thing, it was just like, okay, that's what drove me, because I kind of felt as if like, he was such the favorite. Everybody liked Rampage, where they booed me, they liked him and he was a funny one, and I was like, oh, okay. So the rivalry was very thick, and what made it thicker was the fact that we were supposed to fight at the conclusion of the Ultimate Fighter show, but he was doing an 18 movie, so I had to fight somebody else in the interim, which was Tiago Silva, and then I had an opportunity to fight him again. So the beef kind of simmered a little bit, and every single time I seen him, it was just beef on sight. And having a fight like that, where you have the hype behind it, and there's so much of the backstory behind it, it pulls the fans in. It pulls everybody in. So, no matter where you're at, you can't really escape it. You can't escape the fight. You can't escape what's going to happen. You can't escape people's opinions about what they think is going to happen. So it was a fun time. There was times where he would say something because we had so many back and forths that I would almost laugh because what I'm saying? Because I would get, it was funny. Some of the things he said, it was funny, but it would just piss me off. And then sometimes I would just laugh at like how easy he was able to just kind of get under my skin like a brother. You know what I'm saying? Like a brother that just looks at you and you're like, see, mom, look, he's doing it again. And then your mom look and then he's like, what? He's just looking. And you're like, but he knows what he was doing. You know what I'm saying? So that's what me and Rampage had. We had that dynamic that was just fun to compete against. And when we had to fight, when we actually made it to the octagon to fight, there was nothing like that fight week. That fight week was electric. It was so much build up and so much hype that I remember walking out to the fight, and normally I get the numb legs, but I couldn't feel my legs at all. It felt like I had no legs, man. Like I felt like I had to drag my legs into the cage because I just couldn't feel my feet. And when the fight started, and I ran across it, and I hit him with the punch, and then I ran across and hit, and like what set it off. I was just so in my mind that I just wanted to just finally get a chance to release it. And when I got a chance to hit him and he flew across the cage, I was like, I was shocked. I was shocked because I was just like, man, that was a lot easier than I thought it was. And it was one of the best fights of my life because of the fear that I had to fight through in order to perform.
Hmm. I've got a
So as go ahead.
well. If you had more about Rampage, I wanted to ask.
No, no, I was
So
done with that.
I think that it can be underrated how impactful a corner can be, help a
Yeah,
fighter, to show up and win a fight. And the sort of Leon Edwards talk from his corner has gone viral recently, and the impact that made on the Usman fight. I'm curious, Rashad, were there ever moments in your career where your corner really helped you with an adjustment that made a difference, or is there in the game a legendary cornerman that you think deserves more praise or some more limelight?
yeah. One fight in particular when I was fighting Forrest Griffin. Me and Mike Winklejohn, the coach for Jackson's, him and I always had a great bond and great chemistry. Like a lot of times when I was hitting mitts with them, we would just be having conversation, and he would just be saying things over and over again, getting me to believe in my power, getting me to believe in my striking. And he did a really good job of just kind of making me understand that I didn't only have to wrestle and I had power, and he really helped my self belief. So I was fighting Forrest Griffin, and I don't know. I started to fight off slow, and the first round he won, the second round he won, and I go to the corner, and Coach Winklejohn just grabs the water and he just like slaps it in my face, like just slaps the water in my face, and I get like a cold rush of like, wake the fuck up, and he's just like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And like, he was like, yo, you got to snap out of this. You're going to lose this fight, and you're not even fighting. And the way he got in my ass at that moment was like, I immediately sat up. I immediately stopped the little internal dialogue that I had in my head and just, getting in my head about competing. And I just was like, he's right. I got to go. I got to go. And then the next round, Forrest was doing the same thing that he was doing all fight. 1, 2, 3, leg kick, 1, 2, 3, leg kick. And I caught on to the pattern, and I just anticipated, and I just hit him with a clubbing right hand when he went for the leg kick, and he dropped, and I just got on his ass, and I just didn't stop hitting him. But I remember Coach Winklejohn, he was a very intricate part of just me tapping into that. We talked about the teammate things, and you know, my team, the Jackson team, old Jackson team, was pretty much, you know, the beginning of the super camps. Now you see like all these different guys of different skill levels and different weight classes all coming together to make these super teams. But the Jackson team was the first one to really come around to do that. It was Joey Villasenor, Nate Marquardt, Keith Jardine, myself, and GSP, George St. Pierre. And we all came together to form like this super team, and that super team was dynamic. And for me, when I think of one of my best teammates that I've ever had, it was Keith Jardine, because without Keith Jardine, I don't think I would have been able to get as far in mixed martial arts as I was, because from the Ultimate Fighter show, he brought me into Jackson's. I slept in his spare bedroom while I was in training camp and getting ready for the fights and things like that. So he was a huge, intricate part of me reaching the heights that I did in fighting. And the same thing, we were in the same weight class, right? So he was a 205 pounder, I was a 205 pounder. So he was my measurement of how good I was, and I'm like, I would judge myself how good I did against Keith. And I'm like, these guys are not going to be like Keith. So it gave me that extra confidence. But there was another guy, too, that I trained with that ended up being my coach. His name was Mike Van Arsdale. Mike Van Arsdale was probably the best coach that I had. He was a wrestler by trade, into mixed martial arts. But as he was a mixed martial artist, he was a little bit on the older side, and he was more on his transition out. But what he offered in a coaching standpoint, in a mindset standpoint, was unbelievable. He was light years ahead as far as the mental focus and how to really bring yourself to the mental training, and really how to face yourself when it comes to that mental part of it. But he was also one of those old school coaches that would make you cry during practice. You know what I'm saying? Like the kind where I remember one time. I remember one time in particular, we had to do these Aerodyne sprints, right? He was crazy about the Aerodyne. Like the Aerodyne was like his thing. We would do so many rounds of sparring, but I had to finish on the Aerodyne. And I had to make a mark. I had to like hold it for a certain amount of time, and I had to hit certain RPMs. And I could do that for a while, but when I was dog dead tired, it got increasingly hard. And one time in particular, I was kind of dogging it a little bit, and I couldn't make it. But he said, Evs, listen, Evs, listen to me, okay? I'm going to be honest, man. You're dogging it today. And if you don't keep it at this pace for 30 seconds, we starting all over. Now, we were doing reps of like 7 in a row. And I got to like the 6th one, and then I did this. Then I was supposed to do the 7th one, and then have a break. So I missed the time that he said, and then he said, "Man, we got to do the whole damn thing over." I almost quit. Like I started to cry. I started to like talk crazy, and the thing was like he was just like, "Hey, you can say what you want to. You getting back on the bike." And it was tough, man, because I wanted to quit. I wanted to quit, and I wanted to cuss him out, and I wanted to walk out the room. But I knew if I did that, then I would lose the fight. And that's what I would tell myself. I'm like, if I don't do this, then I'm going to lose the fight. So that's why it made me so emotional to cry. But it was those guys. It was those guys that truly made me become the athlete that I was, because they made me face myself in ways in which I was trying to get out of, to be honest.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful, and it's really cool to hear the two of you talk about, at the end of the day, these teammates and opponents both making you better, right? Like both those things, the opponent and the team that was behind you, ultimately is just elevating you as a person. So pretty special stuff. Didn't wasn't Mike Van Arsdale? Didn't he come to that comedy show with Larry Simmons
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and
yep.
Jake?
Mike Van Arsdale was
Yeah,
there. Yeah, he was.
I remember that. So
Sweet.
very good.
All right, guys. Well, it's time for another community question. If you want to ask us a question, just DM us at GetUmbo, and we'll send you a free product if we pick your question. Since we're on the topic of teammates, I want to ask about memories of teammates who are no longer with us. And so this question is for Jake, but I want to ask a version to Rashad as well. Andy Gonzalez asks, "What's your favorite Pat Tillman memory?" And after that, I want to ask Rashad, what's your favorite Rumble memory?
Oh man, the question's always fun to answer. I get it a lot, as I kind of have assumed the role to speak for the Tillman family. Sometimes it's hard for them to go do these interviews and talk about their amazing son and brother that they lost. And then, I feel like it's a check on myself as I have stopped talking about him at some point. Because I didn't feel like I was living up to the standard that he kind of showed us all that you could live by, which was just to keep going and doing what you want to do and like striving to be better and challenging yourself and challenging others around you and not being complacent, not being dull. That was Pat. And so to answer these questions always is like a little recalibration, a little check on myself to see if I'm doing what I feel like. If I saw Pat today, I could say, yeah, man, this is what I'm up to, Pat. And he'd go, right on, man. Not just be like, you were saying this about doing this and there's not much action. Pat was a man of action. So speaking of him as a teammate, I'll keep my stories to on the field, as there were a lot of good times off because Pat loved to have a Guinness and loved to have fun. But on the field, a couple of my favorite moments, came in practice, actually, when he first got to the Cardinals. Matt Cody was one of our receivers, and Mac ran a route across the middle of the field, and Pat, just kind of came up and was right where he caught it. And when he was coming down, Pat was there, and he just gave him a shoulder and just knocked the shit out of him. And in practice, that's not supposed to happen, right? You're not supposed to do that. But Pat played it 100% just like me, and sometimes you can't turn that switch when that opportunity presents itself to do your job that you're expected to do on Sunday. You do it on Wednesday accidentally and knock your teammate. They get up and start scrapping. And that happens a lot. That's not the funny part. The best part though is like Pat had taken some martial arts in the off season, and so they were going through this fight and they got their helmets on and stuff, and people are trying to break them up, and all you hear is Pat. Matt Cody's like bent over and he's throwing knees on him and he's going, hi-ya, hi-ya, and he's like saying hi-ya on the field, just screaming it. And like by the time the fight was over, we were all laughing so hard. Our coach Tobin got so pissed off because we were laughing because you're not, no fighting, it's not good, but we all were laughing our asses off. And he made Pat and Matt go stand with each other on the sideline right next to each other and just stand there like kids in a timeout. But that's just a memory for me of Pat because, one, you get in a fight and usually you're like, yo, mom, kick you, and he's doing hi-yas like he's stepping on the mat. One more memory of him was like he sprained his ankle. He started, he wasn't supposed to start. This was after, not supposed to be in the NFL, all this stuff I talked about Pat. But he comes in and he's told you're not playing next week. You're done. You're off because you sprained your ankle. And he looked at the trainers like, whatever. Wednesday, he's supposed to be in the training room, icing and stimming. And he's like out on the field, walking around the field, watching us practice. And he's limping a little bit, but I'm watching him. I'm taking stock in like 1 lap, 2 laps. And all of a sudden he's not limping anymore. He's kind of walking with a normal gait. Next day, he's supposed to go to the training room, be off his feet, icing, stim, elevation. He's out and he's like walking and then he's jogging and he's kind of like slowly moving. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay. And then the next day he's out at practice and everybody's like, what the hell? He's like, no, man, ankle ain't going to stop me. I got a job to do on this team. And like I watched him will himself into health and healing by just not doing what normally people would be the regimen or the prescription for healing an ankle. He just went and did it. And, that was Pat. He set his mind to something that usually was going to be done. He was going to make it happen. I loved it, man. Every time on a kickoff when he was a rookie, whether he is in the play or not, the announcer at Sun Devil Stadium for the Cardinals would say, Pat Tillman on the tackle, and the crowd would just go crazy because it was Pat. And he'd come off the field, and I'd be looking at him like, dude, you even make that tackle, man. You're crazy. You're getting all the credit. But smart PA announcer to get the crowd involved. But I was blessed to play with Pat. He was a near and dear friend, one of the best like friends, not my best friend, but the best friend that I have ever had at like checking on you and really like making you want to be better, to do better, to achieve, to like do all that. Pat was spot on. I guess to finish that statement about Pat, I could say Pat was a fucking champion, because that was one of his favorite things. You're a fucking champion, he'd say to you if he liked you.
Yeah, Anthony Rumble Johnson, he was a teammate of mine. When I first started this team out here in South Florida, he was one of the first guys who came to the camp. And originally speaking, I started the team because I wanted to get rid of being part of a super camp. I wanted to say, you know what, forget the super camps. It didn't work out for me at Jackson's. At the end of the day, they chose somebody else over me, and that's how it's always going to be at a super camp. They're always going to go what's best for them being the coaches. So I wanted a camp that was just pretty much centered around just me, guys that I brought in and I paid to spar and stuff like that. And he was one of the guys who I had come down. But what ended up happening is a team ended up forming, and he was in the beginning. There wasn't that many guys that I can train with. There was this guy named Alir Latifi, and there was Anthony Johnson, who at the time wasn't quite a 205 pounder. He was a failed 170 pounder. I say failed as in failed making weight. Then now he was trying 85, and he started to slowly grow into this freaking 8 strong monster, right? I remember when he first came in, it was like, okay, I would go in there and I can kind of work him a bit. I can kind of work him. He had pretty good, decent stand up. He had some power, but when it comes to just the whole flow of the thing, I'll be able to get him. I can take him down. I can, use my groundwork to ride him out. So as he's getting the more confidence and the more success, he goes from 185, had trouble making weight at 185, and now he's at 205. And he was an absolute monster. In training, you try to always take care of your partner. You don't want to hurt them. But there was a long list of guys who Anthony Johnson was just knocking out in training. He was knocking out in training to the point where I'm just like, I was his main partner, but I'm like, dude, listen. I know you may have a little bit of animosity for me or wanting to get me back throughout the years, but I said, look, if you knock me out, I swear to God, we're not training anymore, man. I'm not going to train with you anymore. I'm not going to train with you. And he was laughing about it. He was like, no, I should go Cube. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. And one practice in particular, we're going at it, and we're going back and forth. And he knocked the shit out of me with this kick I just didn't even see, because Anthony had this left kick that just came out of nowhere. There's no tell on it. He hit me with this kick so hard, and I just looked at him. I just paused, and I looked at him, and I said, see, that's that shit. And then he said, oh, my bad. But then he kind of took off the power. But, he was one of those guys who, you know, he had that compassion in him. He had that love in him. He had that, like, all right, I'm gonna take care of this guy. But for a lot of guys, he wasn't taking it easy on them. He was knocking fools out in practice. I'd never seen so many bodies drop than I did when they were sparring Anthony Johnson, man. Like, it was unbelievable. But I can proudly say that he ain't never get me. And I say he ain't never get me, not because, I had that extra skill, but, some bitch ain't never tried to get me. He just always kind of let me be big bro. He let me be big bro and not try to shake that up. So I always liked that and I respected that. Anthony was one of those guys who was a good friend of mine, not only in the gym as a training partner, but just outside the gym. We would hang out, we would have a lot of experiences together. And it was unbelievable and sad to just see, how fast life happens and how fast that transition happened for him. It was something that it sticks with you, it stuck with me on a level that's really hard to explain, but it's one that at times I look at, a picture of him, or I look at one of the, some equipment that I got from him, and it just kind of, hurts a little bit. It kind of stings a little bit, because it wasn't that long ago that he was the strongest, baddest mofo that I know. You know what I'm saying? Had that 8 strong strength, built like a silverback gorilla, man. And, I miss him a lot.
Yeah. Man, beautiful, beautiful guys. You know, both Anthony and Pat just seem like just tremendous people, and I think that's one of the just most beautiful things about life is you get to spend time with some tremendous people, and then when they're gone, it obviously hurts quite a bit. But to sit back and reflect on some of the stories, just to make you smile, man, that's what life's all about. It's that simple little things. You think about some silly thing they did, and you just crack up and think about it, and then it's like, man, life is good. You
Yeah.
know, life is good. So
You
teammates
know,
are good, opponents are good. What you
you
got,
know when
Jake?
I talk about Pat, I always like try to challenge people. He was one human that was phenomenal, and we know a lot of them. A lot of us know a lot of people that were phenomenal. Don't take for granted there's a lot more Pat Tillmans walking out there that just haven't been engaged or had the switch turned a little bit to the right temperature. So yeah, there's so many good people out there, and when you get across paths with someone like that, you know, you count your blessings and let them be an inspiration for your life.
Absolutely. Well, I'm incredibly grateful for each of you guys in my life and the stories. There's so many times I get to reflect on the things that the conversations we've had or the things we're trying to do together and makes life worth living. So I appreciate each and every one of you guys for your being and beingness, you know, and so good
Thank you,
stories. Thanks
Dale.
for the conversations around teammates and opponents and just life in general. So, another episode wrapped up. Much love to each of you guys, and we'll
Yes.
do this again
Much
soon.
love back.
Thanks, guys.
Peace.
Peace, love, and mushrooms.